You're listening to the Mezzo Guild podcast.
بس أنا لازم أحسه الأول عشان أقوله.
아직 나의 어색한 한국말이 짤따рат하고 지적하지 말아주세요.
Я хочу с тобой серьезно поговорить.
Really good news, Farragut. No, I can quit this Moldina as a here show.
Language learning, made simple. I had an interesting thing happen to me recently that I want to share with you today. I was out walking here in Northern California and I came across a Lebanese food truck on the side of the road. I thought to myself, this is a really great opportunity to get out and practice some Arabic and to meet some new people. So I stood in line waiting to be served by this older Lebanese woman, and there were all these people standing around within earshot. As I got up to the front of the line to be served, where I was planning to introduce myself in Arabic, the nerves really hit me hard. I really got nervous all of a sudden. I was suddenly just crazy nervous about talking to this woman. And this was something that I noticed straight away. I noticed it in myself, and I asked myself, why the hell am I nervous like this? I've done this a million times all over the world. Why am I feeling this way right now? Not to mention the fact that Arabic is my best language after English. I couldn't tell at the time if it was the nerves to speak to her in general, fear of screwing something up, or if it was just a concern about using Arabic in front of a bunch of English-speaking strangers and what they might think if they saw it. Long story short, we ended up having a wonderful chat. The nerves went away straight after I started talking to her. I met her husband and her kids, and we actually exchanged contact information. I got a lot of practice, a lot of Arabic practice that day, and I considered it to be a really successful encounter. But I went home and I reflected on what had happened earlier. What caused me to feel like this? What made me feel so nervous? Has it happened before and I just didn't pay attention to it until now? Now, this may come as a surprise to some people who follow my blog, that I still get very, very nervous when I'm practicing foreign languages with other people, both in person and online. If you met me, you would probably think this guy is a total extrovert. I come across as incredibly confident and talkative, but I'm actually very introverted. I'm probably what I would call a sociable introvert. This means that while I crave my me time, my isolated time, like every introvert does to recharge the social batteries, I have no problem with sociability itself. And I've explained the difference before between introversion and sociability. There's a big difference. If you're afraid of talking to people in general, this has nothing to do with introversion. It's actually a social anxiety. It's a very different thing. It's a more serious problem. On the other hand, if you just don't like being around other people, that's a lack of sociability. That means you're not a sociable person. If you fall into this category, then my question for you is, well, why bother learning to speak a foreign language at all? If you don't like being around people, if you're not a people person, then why bother speaking a foreign language? What's the point? As far as social anxiety is concerned, I don't believe I have major problems with it. Meeting new people has never bothered me or never been really hard for me as it is for some other people. But I have always struggled with performance anxiety. Most of us hate public speaking, which is one form of performance anxiety. But even when I was a kid, though I was excellent at sports, for example, whenever I had to play a game in front of a crowd and I had all the eyes on me, it was a really crippling thing. It was a crippling experience. If there was ever a skill that I was great at, and I could do it perfectly in private, if you put me in front of people, I felt like I was an amateur. It was tough. And this even affected my employment in the past, where I once opted out of a job interview because the process required me to take a performance test. I had to actually do a test in front of a group of people, and that just the sheer fact that I had to do a test meant that I just gave up on the job. I just didn't bother going for it. And the test itself, the task that they had to give me was really easy. I threw away a potentially high-paying career back then because I didn't have the nerve to do a simple task in front of a group of strangers. So performance anxiety is a huge hurdle for a lot of language learners that I can relate to. So here's where I give you profound insight into how to solve this problem once and for all. Not exactly. As I've intimated before, I still have to deal with performance anxiety, even after all these years of learning languages, traveling all over the world, speaking to all kinds of people. Like my fear of flying, it never goes away. No matter how many times I do it, it's still there. But here are some steps that I take that I'm sure will help you as well. It'll make it easier for you. Number 1 is accept that you won't ever improve unless you just do it. This is your most important realization to make. And that is that you cannot become a better speaker of a language unless you speak. Full stop, end of story. Listening will not make you a better speaker. Reading and writing will not make you a better speaker either. Only speaking will make you a better speaker. I compare it to my fear of flying. I've flown around the world more than anyone I know, and yet I still find it difficult every single time I get on a plane. I still struggle with it. Even though flying makes me nervous, I tell myself, you can't get to your destination any other way unless you're prepared to sit for months on a ship at sea. Unless you sit on a ship in the middle of the ocean, you cannot get to your destination any other way. So like speaking, flying is absolutely non-negotiable for what I'm doing. It's a given. It has to happen. I have no choice but to suck it up each time and just get it over with. You can't beat or at least challenge the fear of anything either unless you face that fear head on. Number 2, preparedness helps a lot. Just like public speaking, if you know your stuff well, then you'll be far less nervous overall. Performance anxiety is basically an irrational fear of screwing something up in front of other people and the perceived repercussions. So basically you're afraid, you have an irrational fear of making a huge mistake and the fear of what that mistake may lead to. How do you screw up speaking a language? Well, primarily it's forgetting what to say. You're afraid that you're going to forget what to say. You're going to forget things no matter what. But you can take a lot of pressure off by being prepared beforehand. Don't just study words, phrases, and grammar. Memorize situations. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. Try to predict where a particular conversation might head and use that to inform your study. If you're going to talk about your family, for example, then you'll want to familiarize yourself with the vocations of your family members. You'll want to learn how to talk about ages. You'll want to learn all about familial terminology like brother, sister, father, mother, uncle, aunt, etc. Having some kind of an idea beforehand and prepping for predictable conversations makes a big difference to your confidence level and greatly reduces performance anxiety. Number 3, you'll never see this person again. Some people actually find it easier to speak with people they know. Other people prefer to speak with strangers. Now, I fall into the latter camp. I perform worse with most things if the people I know are with me. If I have people that I know, if I have friends, family members with me and I'm doing a task, I tend to perform worse. My performance anxiety is a lot higher. Now, I'm not sure why this is, but maybe it's a fear of being judged. A fear of being judged for poor performance later on by the people who know me best. And the fear that they'll change their attitude toward me for failing. And of course, this is nonsense. Nobody that cares about you is going to do that. One piece of advice I can give regarding strangers is to tell yourself this: I'm probably never going to see this person ever again. So if I screw it up, who cares? And believe me, that takes an element of social pressure off you. It really does, because you might screw something up. You might make a total fool of yourself, but at least you can tell yourself, hey, you know what? I'm probably never going to see this person again anyway. Number 4, don't let reclusiveness be an option. As I said before, speaking is essential to becoming a better speaker, and there is no way out of it. And there's no point to get out of it. Chatting online, text chat, practicing by yourself, reading, all of these antisocial activities are in no way alternatives to speaking with people face to face. If you convince yourself that speaking with people is vital to success, then you will muster up the will to make it happen. Necessity changes everything. but keep convincing yourself that speaking can wait or isn't important, and you'll be waiting for a long time. Number 5, forget about getting it right. So your grammar sucks. Who cares? There's a good kind of perfectionism, the kind that pushes us to strive to do better, to be better. And there's a bad kind of perfectionism, the kind that holds us back until we're perfect. You're not perfect and you never will be. A big part of performance anxiety, certainly in my own case, is the desire to get everything exactly right before proceeding. I want to make sure that this next sentence that comes out of my mouth is 100% accurate and pronounced like a native. Now, one of two things happens. Number 1, either the nerves prevent me from proceeding at all, or 2, I do proceed, I make mistakes, which is natural, but then I beat myself up over the mistakes. And this makes me even more nervous the next time around because I'm aware of the fact that I'm going to make mistakes. So it makes me more nervous, actually makes the situation worse. What I would suggest is to forget about getting everything right. Embrace sloppiness. Nobody cares if you use the wrong tense or the wrong word or you forget a word. Number 6, stay in control of the conversation. And this is a really big one. This is a really important point I don't think gets mentioned enough. Control the direction of the conversation as much as possible when you're practicing. The more you're silent and let the other speaker steer the conversation, the more you'll be tempted to just listen or take a passive role in the conversation, letting the other person ask you questions, which inevitably ends up on a topic that you're not prepared for. Now, part of this is natural. It's going to happen anyway. And I don't want to encourage you to avoid natural conversations by any means. But since you're struggling with the performance anxiety aspect, which is made worse when you lose total control and confidence, try to make sure that you keep control to the best of your ability of where the conversation is heading. Ask questions, make statements, interrupt the other person when you don't understand. I see a lot of people ask questions in foreign languages, which is the easiest part, by the way. But then when the native speaker responds with a long answer that they don't understand, they just nod and they pretend that they get it. Or they just sit there in silence and let the other person rattle on, and they give the impression that they're understanding what's happening. And of course, what's happening here is that the learner is getting more and more nervous as they lose more and more control of the discussion. It ends up on a topic that they don't understand. They end up getting flustered. I've seen it happen so many times, and it's happened to me as well. Politely interrupt and ask for clarification. Otherwise, you're not going to learn anything. And finally, final point, nobody is laughing at you. And if they are, they're a jerk and they're not worth your time. Trying earns respect. One thing I've learned over the years, and I'm still learning through experiences like the one that I've just shared, is that while you're sitting there sweating and worrying that everyone's laughing at your effort, they're actually thinking something totally different. They're looking at you and thinking about how impressive you are. Even if you're a new learner and you can only get a few sentences out, you'll earn respect. You'll earn instant respect for trying. We're not in school anymore where kids laugh at other kids for just about every stupid thing. Keep reminding yourself that your performance anxiety is internal, and it's something that only you, in that moment, are experiencing.